Hello everyone, thank you for listening to Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast, or USB, where we cover Tooele County, Utah high school sports, focused at the moment on varsity football for Grantsville High School, Tooele High School, and Stansbury High School. I hope you enjoyed the previews and the recaps. Thank you for your support, but be sure to get out there and show that support to these athletes, as they're the ones who truly deserve it, and we're just trying to give them a little bit of light for whatever little bit of platform we can provide. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me here on Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast, as the intro said. Thank you for being with me. So this is going to be the Grantsville High School and Ogden High School recap, along with the preview for the Grantsville High School versus Richfield High School game coming up this Friday. Okay, I'm a little bit behind. I was out of town last week, and I'm just trying to get caught up on things and back into the flow of everything. So I apologize for not having any graphics out there, but hey, it is what it is, and here we are. So last Friday, the Grantsville High School Cowboys took on the Ogden High School Tigers in their playoff game. Now, the Cowboys had an impressive outing against the Ogden Tigers, shutting them out for the second time this year. Van Vliet improved on his previous performance, going 14 for 32, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, as well as rushing for 48 yards. Atkinson also improved on his previous performance against the Tigers, rushing for 14 carries for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 receptions for 41 yards. Now, the leading receiver for the Cowboys going into the game was number 5, Jackson Jensen. He had 1 reception for 43 yards and a touchdown, but it was number 8, Jordan Fossen, who was the main target with 8 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. Now, the MVP from the last matchup when these two teams played was number 4, Brent Knickerbocker. He was 3 for 4 on PATs and 1 for 2 on field goals in this matchup. All around, it was a much improved showing from the Grantsville offense, who was kept out of the end zone in the last matchup. With the added production from the run game in comparison to the last meeting, it appears that the Cowboys' offense was more confident. It was in a more confident state of mind, I guess you could say, and found a flow that paid off well for them, in my opinion. As for the defense, they completely shut down the Tigers' offense, who had come into this game having outscored their previous 2 opponents by a score of 98-14 and rushing for 481 yards and 7 touchdowns over the course of those 2 games. So the Grantsville defense held the Tigers to a mere 42 yards on the ground and 0 touchdowns, showcasing a dominant run-stopping performance. Though the Tigers hit their average passing yardage of 160 yards in the air, they had 0 touchdowns to show for it. So that was an outstanding performance from that defense, and it was led by leading total tackler Evan Bunderson. Well, tied total tackler, but he had the most solo, so that's why I gave him the tiebreaker. But number 9, Evan Bunderson, who had 9 total tackles, 9 solo, and 1 tackle for loss, as well as some aggressive big hits. He was laying them. He was hitting them. It was also an outstanding performance, though, by number 12, Mason Butler, who also had 9 total tackles, 5 solo, and 1 tackle for loss. So the Grantsville defense ended with 9 tackles for loss and 3 sacks, led by number 28, Talon Butler, with 2 sacks on the night, and number 30, Tracer Clark, with 1 sack. They also ended with 2 interceptions on the night, one by number 14, Eason Hammond, and one by number 12, Mason Butler. So all around, it was an impressive performance from my point of view, from the entire team. As it's hard enough to beat a team twice, but to shut them out twice and improve your offensive performance as a whole, I think that's pretty impressive. It shows the improvement skills of this team, and it gives positive momentum moving forward into this week's matchup against Richfield. So congratulations to them on a very well played game, very well executed game. Improvements on the offense, the defense. I don't want to say improvements because they've been playing phenomenally all year, but another good showcasing by that defense. Great all-around team win, and like I said, it's hard enough to beat them twice, but to shut them out twice is pretty impressive in my opinion, especially since Ogden came into this game. The teams that they played weren't exactly the most competitive games that they played, but they did very well. They had a ton of rushing yards, and they just could not get anything going against that Grantsville defense. So good job to them. Brief little recap. Like I said, I was out of town. I didn't catch the game. I had to watch it from afar. But it looked way better in execution than the previous matchup, which only yielded field goals for them. So very, very much improved. Very good job, guys. And keep that momentum going into this preview that we're going to talk about for Grantsville versus Richfield. Now, Grantsville comes into this game with a record of 9-2, while Richfield comes in undefeated with a record of 11-0. Richfield comes in after a tough-fought win over Juan Diego with a score of 34-27. Now, mind you, that was their tightest game of the season from what it looked like. So throughout the season, the Wildcats have outscored their opponents 384-143, with 66% of their play calls being run, leading them to 2,600 rushing yards on the season and 30 touchdowns. This will be a true test, in my opinion, to the Grantsville defense, as the Cowboys have done a good job stopping the run. Now the Wildcats aren't, they're not one-dimensional, okay, as they have 65% completion for 1,830 yards and 22 touchdowns through the air as well. So they're not one-dimensional, but I think it's going to be a good test for that defense to have to juggle a pretty substantial run game and as well as a pretty efficient passing game. So, this could be a very good test for that defense to really see what they're made of, I think. But it's going to be an interesting matchup for the Cowboys defensively, as the Wildcats are averaging 14.3 yards on their pass attempts and 6.8 yards via their rushing attack. Some team comparison stuff. As far as points are concerned, the Cowboys have 322 points on the season, while the Wildcats have 418. Passing yards average, the Cowboys have 191 average yards per game, while the Wildcats have a 166 yards per game average in the passing attack. In terms of passing interceptions on the season, the Cowboys have thrown 8. The Wildcats have also thrown 8. Rushing yards, average again here, okay? The Cowboys average 140 yards on the ground per game, while the Wildcats average 236 yards on the ground per game. So, again, kind of back to what I was talking about with, this is going to be a very good test, I think, for that Grantsville defense. In terms of the defense, sacks, Cowboys have 29 sacks on the season, averaging 2.6 per game. The Wildcats have 13.5 on the season, averaging 1.2 per game. As far as tackles for loss go, the Cowboys have 60 on the season, while the Wildcats have 56. And defensive interceptions, the Cowboys have 16 takeaways from their defensive group, and the Wildcats have 20 interceptions. So, pretty comparable on everything but the sacks. Grantsville does seem to get more sacks. Maybe, I don't really know what the reason for that is. I would lean to think it's because of the blitzes, right? But kind of watching some of their film, the Wildcats seem to do the same thing. So, maybe they just play some more run-heavy teams. I don't know. So it's an interesting comparison. But everything else seems to be pretty comparable in terms of interceptions, tackles for loss. The passing yards average. The rushing yards average is definitely different by almost 100 yards a game. So that's going to have to be, I think, a focus of emphasis for the Cowboys defense. But in terms of your defensive comparison by position, by players, okay, your total tackles leader for the Grantsville Cowboys is number 12, Mason Butler, with 96 total tackles, 58 solo, and 7 tackles for loss. For the Wildcats, you've got number 5, Yardley. He's got 78 total tackles, 28 solo, and 5 tackles for loss. For sacks, number 28 for the Cowboys, number 28, Talon Butler, 8.5 sacks for 32 yards lost and 3 quarterback hurries. For the Wildcats, you've got number 32, Robison. I thought I misspelled that, by the way. There's no N in that, so it's Robison. Not sure how you pronounce it, but there's no N. He's got 3.5 sacks for 15 yards lost and 5 hurries. In terms of interceptions for the Cowboys, your leading interception player is number 8, Jordan Fossum, with 5 interceptions on the season, returned for 136 yards. Great job, young man. And for the Wildcats, again, you have number 5, Yardley. He's got 8 interceptions for 121 yards returned. Fumbles. The Cowboys' defense has caused 10 fumbles on the season and recovered 15. Meanwhile, the Wildcats have caused 13 fumbles and recovered 9. So both teams are pretty aggressive on getting that ball, it looks like. Your offensive comparison, your quarterback position, your leading passer for the Cowboys is number 1, Dallin Van Vliet. He's a 139 for 293 on the season, 47% completion rate. He's got 1,978 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's got 87 carries for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. As for the Wildcats, you got number 3, Wayman. He's 113 for 162 on the season with a 70% completion rate. Pretty impressive there, but I'll kind of get into my thoughts on that. He's got 1,598 yards on the season, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He's also got 77 carries for 203 yards and 6 touchdowns. So pretty comparable. I mean, obviously the completion percentage is different, but I'll kind of get into that here in a second of why I think that is. But pretty comparable at the quarterback position there, I think that's a pretty even matchup. Obviously, Van Vliet's thrown more passes, but either way, touchdowns, interceptions, and then the scrambling, it's all pretty comparable. So good matchup there, I think. In terms of your running backs, for the Cowboys, you got number 32, Jaden Atkinson. He's got 169 carries for 1,233 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 receptions for 136 yards. Sorry, guys, I just realized my vibrator is on. Let me turn that off. Sorry about that. Again, your running back comparison, number 32, Jaden Atkinson, 169 carries for 1,233 yards and 16 touchdowns. He's also got 11 receptions for 136 yards. Your running back comparison for the Wildcats, again, number 5, Yardley. He's got 83 carries. He's their leading rusher, 83 carries, 894 yards, 9 touchdowns, 37 receptions for 590 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, the Wildcats are similar to Tooele in that aspect where they have 2 to 3 rushers that have pretty substantial amount of rushing yards. So they don't utilize just one guy out of their backfield. And so that's pretty impressive, I think, that he's got that many yards off that many carries. It's clearly a good setup that they're running out of there. And he's obviously an option for the passing game. Watching some of the playback, he kicks out a little bit to a receiver slot too. So he's not just staying in the backfield. All those passes aren't just coming out of the backfield. In terms of your wide receiver comparison, your leading receiver for the Cowboys as of yesterday when I put together all these stats is number 8, Jordan Fossen. He's got 46 receptions for 597 yards and 7 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure Jackson Jensen was right behind him by like 5 yards shy. Those two are having a great season. They're both doing amazing stuff, but Jordan took the lead this week, and it is what it is. For the Wildcats, number 7, Fountain, Fautin. He's got 48 receptions on the year for 643 yards and 12 touchdowns. So here's kind of some of my thoughts, right? This will have to be an on-point game for Van Vliet, I think. He'll be facing a ball hawk of a defensive secondary. I mean, they've got several interceptions on the season. Their linebackers are disrupting plays, whether that be through a blitz or dropping back into coverage, disguising things. So he's going to have to be on point. He's going to have to make sound decisions and try not to force it in tight coverage, I think. And this might be a game where there will be times where it's best for him to just throw it away than to try and make the play. Or even maybe scramble more, because one thing I've noticed from watching Van Vliet is he's a competitor, man. So he's going to try to get the ball down the field. And I think in this game, he might need to take that back a notch and really think about the decisions that he's making, because this doesn't appear to be a defense that likes to give you very many opportunities. So the more you squander that, I think the worse it is for your team. Now, if Atkinson and that offensive line can have a great performance, I think there will be a very good chance of them surprising some people, because I don't think a lot of people are expecting them to beat the Wildcats, simply because, one, record, Grantsville's number 3, Wildcats are number 2 in 3A. So I definitely don't think that there's no reason that they can't beat this team, but I do feel like they're going to have to be on point. They're going to have to make sure that they're making smart decisions. I think that's what it's really going to come down to, not gambling when they don't need to, and while watching the game the Wildcats had against Carbon, most of Carbon's good runs came up the middle. As the outside backers for the Wildcats, they blitz off the edges pretty frequently, but like I said, they like to rotate and drop into coverage and cover it up pretty well. Very similar to how Grantsville kind of operates in a lot of ways, in my opinion. It's not obviously the exact same, but that's kind of the bread and butter, right? I mean, that's how you got to confuse the quarterbacks, and that's what they did against Carbon. So, Yardley he's clearly their Swiss Army knife, for the Wildcats, but I think you have to pay attention to number 32 as well, Robeson. He is their leader in sacks, and from the game that I was watching, I think it was the Carbon game, he moves over to a better matchup a lot of times to try to maximize his opportunities. So I think on top of having, Yardley dropping into coverage and being, their interception leader, right? If I'm not mistaken, yeah, with 8 interceptions on the year, and he's also their leading tackler. I think you still got to watch number 32 though. I think he's going to be, when you start paying too much attention to Yardley, I think that's when he kind of comes in and takes over, right? So I don't know, but I did watch some of the Juan Diego game. I finally found that game to be able to watch, where they played Richfield. And oddly enough, the inside runs that Juan Diego does appeared to be quite effective against the Wildcats. The Wildcats blitz off the edges primarily. I mean, they did send their middle linebackers, but a lot of times it was their outside linebackers. So I think that's why that middle opened up for them. Very interesting because, we played Juan Diego and they didn't really have much success up the middle. So it was interesting to see that be successful against, Richfield, who's arguably had a very good season. So very interesting to see there. That was a close game for them, their closest of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So very interesting how that kind of played out. I don't know. It also looked like in that game, the Wildcats prefer screen passes and sweeps from their offense. So I think if the Cowboys can defend the flats pretty well, they'll force the Wildcats into tough downfield passes, which, I mean, that's what Jordan waits for, in my opinion. He's looking for him to get down the field so he can jump those passes and make big plays, right? So that might work into our advantage, or it might burn us, right? But they did a lot of short passes to the outside, misdirection, play action type stuff to just get it out of the quarterback's hands quickly. And so if that game is any indication of their gameplay style, I imagine that's why their passing completion percentage is so high. Because it's good easy passes, and it's the runs after the catch that are getting them the yardage. So that's my speculation, because again, I only saw the Juan Diego game and portions of the Carbon game. But if that's any indication of that, I think that's why that percentage is so lopsided against the quarterback comparison. So where Grantsville tends to, at least we'll throw more passes 10 to 15 yards down the field. And it didn't look like that's what they like to do there in Richfield. So I don't know. But with that being said, though, number 5, Yardley, he's good at getting into space downfield and chasing the ball down for those passing plays. I watched, he just outran the defender and basically chased after the ball. The quarterback put it in a good position. So that's something that I'm sure the Cowboys are aware of. But that's something that could burn us down the field if the defenders make the wrong reads or things like that. So kind of similar to the offense, I think that there's just going to need to be a big emphasis and focus on not taking chances, right? Like, do what you do naturally. You guys are good. Just do what you do naturally. Don't try to be the hero and then it backfires on you because you make the wrong read or something like that. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion on it. But again, like I said, the Wildcats have several rushers with good yardage, so I think that's an added element that I don't really think the Cowboys have much exposure to throughout the season. Primarily the teams we're playing have dedicated runners. That their stat line really reminded me of looking at the offensive stat line for Tooele, and there was 3 rushers there that were basically just variations out of the backfield for each one of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how the Grantsville defense kind of acts to that. For all I know, Juan Diego's the same way because they do a lot of inside runs, but I just didn't have any personnel stats, so I don't know if I can't remember if it was going to different people. So they might do very well against that, but all in all, though, I think this will be a good matchup. I think the offense for the Cowboys is much more in sync than it has been a little bit earlier in the season. I think they're doing a little bit better on that camaraderie part of it and stringing together successful drives. So, I do think it'll be a good matchup for that, but again, the offense will need to be sharp though, and minimal room for mistakes, I think, in this game. execution is going to be crucial in my opinion. So I don't know. That is a game where you can try. I don't know that this is a game where you can try new things, right? But at the same time, if what you do normally doesn't work, then I suppose you don't really have a choice but to get creative. But I think that like Fossen and Fuentes on the short passes, I think they could have a big day with that. The Wild, especially if the Wildcats defense is overly aggressive on the rush, which they appeared to be, which is a factor they have to take into consideration. As Atkinson is over 1,000 yards on the season, so it's very likely that the Wildcats are going to want to shut that down. I know I would, right? I mean, you're coming into a game where, you're facing a very good runner, very good running back. That would be a point of emphasis. So I think with that over aggressiveness, those short passes that Grantsville likes to do out to Fossen and Fuentes, I think could really be extremely beneficial, especially if they can hit them in stride and get them out in the open space. I think that's the key, right? It's one thing to get it to them, but you got to give them space to operate too. So hopefully they can do that. Hopefully that line can hold up long enough, maybe just a split second longer to give Van Vliet a little bit more time for somebody to pop out, and hopefully hit them in stride. And I think they can have a very, very good success there. But again, I mean, at the same time though, that defense from the Wildcats, Yardley in particular, he's very good at dropping into coverage and picking off those plays. So I don't know, could be tough, could be very tough. But I think just seeing the a little bit more consistency, I think you could say, out of the Cowboys offense the last couple of weeks, I really think like they're going to be able to move the ball. It's probably going to be tough at times for sure. And we already know that the Grantsville defense is going to make it tough on the Wildcats to move the ball too. So I imagine there's going to be some big plays from both sides. It's going to be kind of sporadic. At least I'm hoping. I mean, to me, that makes good football as a fan. As a coach and a player, it probably does not. But as a fan, I think that makes good football when it's tight like that, and you're basically who can make the most big plays. Those are very energetic games to be a part of as a fan. So that's what I'm hoping to see here. And again, I think that there's a good chance that Grantsville could pull this out. And I don't want to say that like I doubt them, right? But Richfield is undefeated. They've had a very good season, and they've done a very good job of keeping teams out of the end zone. What did I say it was, like 380 something to 143 or something like that on the season? Yeah, 384 to 143 in terms of points scored. So they've done a very good job with that. And again, I just find it extremely interesting that the closest game was against Juan Diego, and it was the runs up the middle that kind of seemed to be the difference maker there. So I mean, obviously they're probably going to react to that slightly, but yeah, very interesting aspect to kind of see, and granted, like they don't play Juan Diego all that often, so maybe it was just kind of they were unfamiliar with them type thing. I don't know, but that part was very interesting to me. Again, I'm looking forward to one being there this week. Just so you guys know, the last time that I had to miss a playoff game, when my son was playing, we had to go out of town for a wedding and watch the game. I think that was this one. I don't know. We were out of town. We missed the game for whatever reason. Maybe that's not the right reason, but we missed the game for whatever reason. Playoff game. And Grantsville ended up going to state and winning it that year. So I'm not saying I'm good luck, but maybe it's good luck. Okay. I was out of town for last week's game. Didn't get to see it in person, which was probably for the best. Cause if you're a fan or a parent, every time you record, they never do anything. But then as soon as you put it down, all of a sudden somebody will break off an 85-yard run or something, right? That's how it kind of goes. So I'm not saying that that's a good luck charm. All I'm saying is it worked before. So, hey, I'm sticking with that energy. Let's go get it. Excited to see the game. Again, I was out of town, so I'm not going to do a Stansbury recap just because I'm kind of out of time. I'm way behind. But good luck to Stansbury moving forward. I will do my best to get some graphics up for him, but I don't know that I'm going to do a full review type thing like I'd have here. I'm just out of time, guys, so I do apologize to Stansbury. It's not how I wanted it to go. And arguably, I wasted a lot of time that I probably could have done it. I'll admit that myself, but I'm a little tired. All right. So that is your recap and your preview. Okay, so again, that game, the number 3 Grantsville Cowboys will be taking on the number 2 Richfield Wildcats this Friday, November 8th at 7 p.m. The game will be played at Zions Bank Stadium. What's that, Harriman, I think it is. So, yeah, be there. Be there or be square, as the saying goes 30 years ago. All right? But, no, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be cold. That's a factor, right? Cold is always a factor. Just remember, if you're cold, they're cold. So who's going to be cold more? That's what it comes down to. I'm excited. Can't wait to see you guys play. Go kick some butt. It's weird saying that, but I have to edit myself. Okay, so go hit them in the mouth. Not literally though. Like, all right, that's violence. You get it. Anyways, that's the episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Good luck. Like I said, good luck to the Stallions as they play their game, and best of luck to the Grantsville Cowboys moving forward. We'll see you guys at the game. Thank you for listening to Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast. You can follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast. The podcast is available on iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music. So for all the updates, please follow the Instagram page as we post the updates there, as well as the stats for these amazing young athletes. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, please take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you later.